I'm joined by Joe Hill, co-founder of One Planet Pizza. Thank you so much for joining me, Joe.
Hey, pleasure, Daniel. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's a real honor.
Can you please give a two-sentence just elevator pitch about One Planet Pizza so we can kind of give some context on what we're talking about today?
Absolutely. So we are One Planet Pizza. We're the UK's first and leading frozen vegan pizza company. We hand stretch from scratch a range of award-winning artisan frozen vegan pizzas, and the idea is that these are better for you, better for the planet, and better for the animals.
Excellent. So I think that's a really great way to start, or a really great way to explain it. And I'm curious to know, we'll save this in for just a second, that word hand stretch or term sounds really interesting and very delicious. So, but why, so you mentioned a couple of key things there. So could you summarize why is the work you're doing important for the environment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how many documentaries you've watched recently, but the world is changing a lot. And with these fires in Australia, we had the fires in the Amazon over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And all the work that David Attenborough's doing to raise awareness about climate change. And one of the things that often gets missed out is how important what we eat and drink on a daily basis as consumers is towards the effects on climate change. So what we do is our company and our pizzas, we use them as a tool, a vehicle for raising awareness for the impact of what we eat on the climate. And so I don't know if you know this sort of, it's now a really sort of far and widely shared fact that animal agriculture produces more carbon emissions than transportation combined, all transportation combined across the planet.
Yeah.
And so a really popular graduate from Oxbridge recently conducted one of the largest studies on the environmental impact of the different food types we eat in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And he found conclusively that the single most effective thing an individual can do as a consumer is cut out meat and dairy to help save the planet. So that's what we try and champion as a small ethical pizza producer.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's I have heard that, and I recently read a really good book which is called We Are the Weather by Jonathan Safran Foer. I haven't watched too many documentaries because I think I can't really handle the images that go along with these kind of documentaries, so I tend to avoid the video. But the book was basically saying just how important it is, as in terms of what we as individuals can do to help with the environment. It's really what he was saying is, at the very minimum, only basically don't eat any animal-based products for breakfast or lunch, at the very minimum. So I guess you're kind of describing why this is important. And so the pizzas you have are vegan, and it's to champion this idea that animal products are bad for the environment. Where exactly is the problem with animal products in terms of the environment?
It's how we mass produce things nowadays to cope with demand and a growing populations. But I mean, if you go and look at or Google, factory farming, industrial farming on a global scale, it's just enormous.
Yeah.
One of these, I mean, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but if you exclude ice, so you call dry land is any land on Earth that isn't ice or water. And it's something ridiculous, like 40–50% of that total land mass is occupied by animal agriculture.
Wow.
which includes the farming, raising the cattle, and all the space in between that involves getting that food to a point where we can kill it and eat it. So it takes up an enormous amount of land, and it's incredibly inefficient way of consuming our calories, because essentially what we're doing is we're creating a middleman, so that all the grains that we grow across the planet are fed to these animals, which we don't have to, get to the size where they are then big enough to kill and eat, which is incredibly efficient. So we're feeding up the middleman to then kill it, to then eat those calories, which obviously, 75-80% of those calories have been wasted through that process. So what vegans say now is, well, look, with all the evidence out there, it's pretty obvious we can cut out this middleman and eat all that food ourselves, and save a heck of a lot of energy in the process.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There are certainly, I think you're speaking specifically about this factory farming, which is absolutely terrible, especially considering, sounds like you're primarily referring to cows, but it happens with pigs and chickens as well. This diet isn't healthy or natural for these animals, which kind of almost makes the problem worse, because, as you're saying, we have to feed the animals food which otherwise humans can eat. So yeah, indeed, you're kind of taking up land twice, once for the food for the animals, and then for the animals themselves. I'm curious to know, I've interviewed a couple of people on the show who are actually using animals as part of their farming practices. So they're only feeding them grass, and they use it as a way to kind of like mow the grass almost, as a way to kind of keep the nature sort of healthy. That's their take on it. Is that something that you would that you see as excluded from the factory farming, and that's not really part of the story, or is that would it kind of all fit into the same I guess sphere in terms of animal agriculture?
Yeah, I think it's great that people are making an effort to try and bring animals into the forefront of attention and move away from factory farming. But it doesn't help with the wider issue necessarily. So I think we try and stay focused when we talk about these really relevant and current and very important topics when it comes to animal agriculture and trying to save the planet and save animals essentially. We always try and focus on the bigger picture. So we have a lot of people asking, well, I grow, I have a small farm, I have my own chickens, and they live a happy, healthy life, and then we kill them as they get older, and we obviously eat their eggs. And those isolated situations are great, and we, essentially we don't have a big problem with those. Our problem is with the factory farming, the mass farming, and a lot of this organic farming and this, what you mentioned, these individual cases, whilst they are good, I don't think they're helping deal with the bigger problems, and also they're not scalable. So you can't. I think one of the issues that Cowspiracy touched on in that documentary is that organic farming can actually be worse when it comes to cattle specifically, because they take up more land, and I think they have to eat more food because they live longer and healthier, happier lives. And if you actually do the maths and scale that up, it actually causes more problems with the environment and produces more carbon emissions.
Interesting.
So it's a really big issue, because while there are some people who are trying to earn a living and have farms, and they don't have an alternative, and they want to do it more sustainably, I fundamentally don't know if that's possible based on everything I've seen, and I think that the way forward is just to work out how to cut out that middleman and to just take it back a step and come up with solutions for these farmers to grow other crops that we can eat directly ourselves, and it's much more energy efficient.
Absolutely. And I think moving over to the health aspect, I just watched recently Game Changers, which I think was a big...
I was hoping you'd say you'd watch that.
Yeah, that's the only... and he uses the term plant-based. I noticed that he never actually, as far as I remember, said the word veganism in the film. And I think he did that very, very deliberately. But yeah, after I watched that, it was so well done. that I said, basically, I need to try this. There's no way that after watching that film, I cannot try going plant-based, or the way I interpreted it was basically veganism. And
yeah,
for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's basically following the story of someone who got injured. He was a martial artist, and through his process of getting rehabilitated and through health for his health, he basically went vegan, and supposedly because of that, he ended up healing his injuries much faster, and he became stronger. So he just started looking at all these different athletes, essentially, and started seeing who was on a vegan diet. And turns out a lot of people are, and it works really well for them. And so I know you've been vegan as well for about, what is it, 3 or 4 years now?
Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 years I've been vegan. Yeah, and I was vegetarian since the age of 10, when I was old enough to make that decision myself and understand where my food was coming from, and make those choices. But I was very fortunate as a kid because I had a good variety, a very open-minded parents. So my dad was a vegan. He's my other business partner for One Planet Pizza, and he's been vegan for 35 years. So that was always around me. And I've got 2 sisters, and one of them's now vegan as well, and the other one's a carnivore, and my mum's pescatarian. So wow. we've got the whole collection of dietary requirements.
Yeah, so lots of philosophies to pull from. And
Absolutely.
35 years is a very long time. And in terms of the health benefits, I mean, I don't think your dad would be eating or being vegan for 35 years if he wasn't seeing any health benefits from it.
He's living proof that it can be done, and you can thrive as well. Not just survive on a vegan diet, but what's more important is that he is evidence in living form that he's now 55, 56, and he's still running marathons.
Wow.
He absolutely thrashed me this summer when we did a marathon for the vegan charity Beaver, who run sort of national campaigns to raise awareness about the impact of animal agriculture on the climate. But so he's done some Ironmans over the last 5 or 6 years, which I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're like top level endurance events, and it's crazy what he's still doing. And he hardly gets injuries. He hardly has to go to the doctor or the dentist. He's testament to the plant-based diet and being able to thrive on it as an athlete.
Yeah. So fantastic. I think
we're always talking about that.
Yeah. And I think it's important to mention, and that's kind of where this whole idea of Game Changers or the film really comes into play, is that it is thriving rather than surviving. And I think that's really important. It doesn't make sense to make these kind of pretty big changes to your lifestyle if you're just going to survive. You really do need to thrive and feel great, and be able to do your work and live your passions and all of that. And if a change in lifestyle like this helps you do that, then I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I certainly feel much better on it the last 3 or 4 years as well.
Yeah, that's really awesome. It's I'm certainly, I have to say that I haven't committed to it 100%, but I'm actively following the book's recommendation that I was mentioning earlier, We Are the Weather, by Jonathan Safran Foer, where I'm not eating any animal products for breakfast or lunch.
Brilliant.
And that's like an easy way, I think, to ease into it, because breakfast and lunch, it's easy, I mean, breakfast, there's so many breakfast foods that have no animal products in them kind of already that people would eat. I mean, peanut butter is easy. Or, I mean, I sometimes just skip breakfast altogether because I'm not hungry. I feel great for doing it. And then lunch is easy, big salad. It's nice, feels really refreshing. And then in the evening, that's where I think the most pressure is for most people anyways, in the evening, because you go out with friends and you have dinners and it gets really difficult. So at the very least, if you're focused on breakfast and lunch, then you get used to this notion of not eating animal products. And I'm
absolutely
noticing that sometimes even for dinner, I'm just on a roll and I don't want anything. I just think, it's so easy to not have any animal products that I'll have like a nice tofu thing or something with a lot of beans and rice. And I always feel really light and just kind of like sort of free almost. I can't really describe it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously we're out there doing events, and you know, our whole lives are built around veganism. But I personally prefer the term plant-based, because I think if we want to influence the most change possible with the time we have, then I think using the term plant-based, it has fewer connotations, it has less stigma.
Absolutely.
It's much more friendly and inviting to the average consumer. We've changed our packaging to adapt a lot more terminology around plant-based living, because we find it is more inviting, and people they feel they can jump in and out of it. Like you say, you know, having your breakfast and lunch plant-based, and then it takes the pressure off you to go fully vegan. And when we meet a lot of people, they say, I want to go vegan, but I just don't know if I can do it 100%.
Exactly.
And I'm forever saying, you know, that's great. You know, we don't expect you to start running marathons before you've even gone for a park run. You know, you can't do these things straight away. And, you know, it's all about taking it one step at a time and doing what works for you. So I'm all about using the term plant-based, which goes back to Game Changers being so effective. And I think partly it is because they didn't have the weight surrounding it with the word veganism and the expectations that lie with it. I
think that's a really good point. And I feel like we can talk about this all day, because I have so many other things to say. And I really want to jump into the actual pizza, because I had to prepare for this, for our conversation. This was by far some of the most fun research I've done. I went out and had to get some of the pizza. So I work next to
it's a tough job, isn't it?
I know, it's hard work. So I got the exotic fungi pizza from a shop nearby, and I had it, and it was fantastic. And
I'm glad you said that.
I had the I also purchased the I'm blanking on the name right off the top of my head, but it's the one with all the vegetables on it.
The roasted Mediterranean vegetable.
Exactly, that one. It looks very good, but just I wasn't able to organize myself in terms of having a chance to taste it. So I'll let you know how it is when I have it. The very first thing I noticed, which I think is probably, at least in my opinion, maybe the most important factor, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, was the cheese. It's actually stretchy and it tastes good. It doesn't taste like, I've had some vegan cheeses which taste like coconut, or they taste like something else. But this one actually tasted cheesy, and it tasted similar to pizza. So what's the most important ingredient? I know that you also hand make all your sauce. So what makes a pizza? I mean, because you're trying to really make it delicious. So what's the most important factor to focus on?
So coming out as the UK's first frozen vegan pizza company, there is a lot of pressure to deliver, because this isn't just coming out with another frozen pizza. It's, you know, it's a tool for change. It's a message. It's a statement. We're coming out saying we think this is as good, if not better, than what you've already been eating and what's, you know, already available on the market. And it comes with a strong message. You know, it says we're here for change. You know, this isn't just a good tasting ready meal. This is something which is going to help make the world a better place. You know, it's not going to start with one pizza, but it's going to do something.
That is a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure. So the cheese had to be right, because that's the first thing that we get asked from probably 90% of people.
Interesting.
Is you know, does it have cheese on it? What is the cheese made of? And does it taste and look and feel like real cheese? Because essentially, if it doesn't, most of the people out there aren't going to buy it again. You know, they're going to go back to eating a normal pizza, because it has to taste good. It has to taste similar for most people to be willing to keep buying it. So cheese was number one. We use V-Bites, Cheesely, so ZLY at the end of cheese. And we worked with their food technologist team because we realized that this has to not just taste like cheese, but it has to really feel like cheese, and it has to have that nice mozzarella pull to it. You know, people aren't going to give up cheese if they can't find a good replacement.
No.
I think it's that simple.
Yeah, I heard, I was talking to someone else who's leads a plant-based lifestyle, to use that term. And he said that he listens to a lot of podcasts and reads a lot about it. And he said that typically the most difficult thing for a person who's transitioning from like an omnivore diet to a plant-based one is cheese. That's the last thing typically to go, which I think is testament to how important this factor is. And I would imagine basically what you're saying in terms of the mozzarella pull, it's not just the flavor, but it's the texture as well, which is absolutely crucial.
It's a whole experience. Yeah. So pizza is the #1 fast food in the whole world. It's
wow.
So we're taking on a big challenge here. We're trying to reinvent the wheel, essentially.
Big job.
We made sure we did our research. I mean, we've probably tasted more vegan cheeses than anyone else on the planet.
Tough job.
And yeah, we've melted them, we've frozen them, we've left them for 6 months, 12 months, cooked them. And we started off by using cheese. So it's cheese with an S. Yeah, so the company that produced cheese are called Bute Island. Okay. And it's a tiny island of the Scottish Highlands.
Oh, wow. Must be beautiful.
They were who we were using first, a really good vegan cheese alternative. But we were having a lot of people, less vegans, but more flexitarians and reducers, who were starting to buy our pizzas as we were growing. And they were saying, well, this cheese tastes great, but when I bring my pizza out the oven, it doesn't look anything like real cheese. It's a bit watery, and I cut it and it's a bit runny and gooey. So we knew we had to, you know, if we wanted to become a big company that's going to take on these serious issues and help people reduce their meat and dairy intake, then we need to get this cheese right straight away. So we worked with a food technologist from VBites.
And what is VBites? Because that's, I think, a really interesting partnership that you have. Yeah,
so in the last 2 years, we initially started, when we started 4 or 5 years ago, we initially crowdfunded. We were the first company to crowdfund within the vegan plant-based community.
Cool.
And that helped us, you know, get started, get our feet off the ground, start making pizzas and getting the word out there. And then we kept growing and expanding. And so about a year and a half ago, we got some further investment from Heather Mills. So she's a relatively well-known celebrity in the plant-based world, and she's doing some incredible things. But she also, alongside everything else, runs VBites, which is one of the UK's leading sort of meat alternative producers. And she also does a range of cheeses. So as part of this investment with Heather, we said, you know, we need to improve our cheese. We need to build on this. We need to make it not just taste like cheese, but it needs to feel like cheese. And it needs to be that experience where you buy a pizza, you cook it, and that you ping it out of the oven, and it's got that lovely, you know, that bubbling melted brown cheese, and you cut it and you pull it, and, you know, it has that stringy gooiness.
It has to have that little kind of golden brown. Yeah.
Oh, you never realize how important cheese is until you take it out of your diet and you start making it for other people.
Yeah.
But I mean, luckily, we had a brilliant food technologist work with us, and we created what we think is the best stretchy pizza cheese out there at the moment, which is really exciting. And it's something which we use as I said before, a bit of a vehicle for helping people change and reconsider, you know, what vegan food looks and tastes like.
Yeah. Would you ever consider, or do you actually just sell the cheese on its own? I imagine that people who are plant-based or dairy-free, for example, they would want a cheese alternative, especially if it works so well and it's so tasty. I mean, I'd buy that cheese just as it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, so VBites do sell this cheese.
Okay.
You can buy it grated or in blocks, and it's just it's called VBites Cheesely, so ZLY at the end of cheese. I think it's mostly available in Morrison's. They have their online store as well. But we still recommend cheese as well, which is in a lot of supermarkets. They're both brilliant cheeses, and they both melt very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so going back to the question, cheese is the number one. It has to be. We have to get that right, and we go around the country now advocating this vegan cheese we have, because it's such an important thing for people who are on that journey. It's still the number one.
Moving over to the other ingredients, because the pizza ultimately isn't just a block of cheese that's melted. There are a lot of other ingredients, and what I really like about your story at One Planet Pizza is that it's all the ingredients you get are local, or at least you try as hard as you can.
Yeah, yes, we source all of our ingredients and packaging locally wherever possible. But because we are an artisan pizza producer, we do find that the best tomatoes and flour does come from Italy still. Okay. You know, these guys have been making pizzas longer than anyone else.
That's true. Yeah.
So we have to if the best ingredients flavor-wise come from Italy, then we have to find a way of getting them.
Yeah.
But in terms of the other ingredients, so our bases, we keep as simple as possible. But when we started making these pizzas from scratch, it was just Mike and me in his kitchen in Norwich, just doing some late night testing and trying to create these 4 recipes before we launched. And what we did was, I think it was an advantage at the time, is we didn't have an enormous amount of experience in the food production side of things. Mike owned a restaurant. We both like cooking. We were both passionate about cooking from scratch, but you know, we hadn't been making other ingredients or products to sell before. So we stripped back all of those ingredients that you would find in other pizzas, and we started just with the absolute basics, which was flour, yeast, salt, water, and we found that you didn't need to add a lot of these artificial flavorings, ingredients to preserve things. You know, if you got the ingredients right from the start, you could actually keep it very basic and very simple.
Yeah.
One of the things we added from the start was flax seeds.
Okay.
So flax seeds can be grown in this country very effectively and efficiently. And what we do is we buy these in bulk, we ground them up ourselves, and we add these and infuse these into all of our bases. And if you buy our pizzas and look through the base, you know, from underneath, you'll see these little broken up pieces of flaxseed, which are an absolute powerhouse in terms of their nutritional benefits.
Yeah.
They're incredibly high in omega-3. They've got that great ratio of the omegas, but really good source of protein and fiber as well. So we infuse those into every single base to make sure they're as healthy as they can be, which is something no other pizza company is doing. And then with our homemade tomato sauce, again, we keep it as simple as we can. So just Italian tomatoes, your 2 classic herbs, which have to go into a pizza sauce, which is oregano and basil, and then a little bit of salt. And then what makes our sauce special is we add a lot of fresh garlic, which traditional Italian pizzas don't tend to do that much. You won't find garlic in a lot of pizza sauce in Italy, but we find with the UK palate, and especially in the vegan plant-based community, people tend to love garlic. So we've made sure we put a lot of garlic in it, and people tend to like that. But the secret ingredient in our sauce, which we always champion, is chia seeds.
Okay.
You've probably heard about these.
I've heard of them. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I've seen them everywhere, and there's drinks with them, but I don't really know the magic behind it.
Yeah, so chia seeds are just these tiny little seeds, which again are an absolute powerhouse when it comes to nutrients. So they actually contain all of the essential amino acids that humans need,
I did not
which is an incredible fact, because there aren't many products out there that do that.
No.
And so we use these to thicken up our pizza sauce naturally, whereas a lot of companies would use artificial thickeners. You'd see those in the ingredients if you look through, you know, a mainstream pizza in the frozen or refrigerated sector. They'll have a lot of artificials in there.
Yeah, a bunch of ingredients you can't really pronounce at all.
The ones you can't pronounce. Yeah. So with chia seeds, we always thought, let's put these in the sauce because they're so healthy, they're so nutritional, but they don't actually impact on the flavor at all. So I put them in the sauce, make them healthier without having any, you know, drawbacks. Yeah. And what we found by accident is that actually they were thickening up our tomato sauce. So they were having a functional purpose as well as increasing their health benefits. So now we talk about how our natural thickener is chia seeds. So it's not just practical and it helps the sauce stay on the pizzas when we're producing them, but it comes with all these health benefits, which mean that all of our pizzas are a source of omega-3.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think moving over to the health benefits, an interesting thing that I'm noticing is that I went for about 3 weeks after watching Game Changers where I was 100% more or less plant-based. And one of the things that was kind of difficult for me to get used to was I kind of always felt hungry. And that's partially probably because I just went cold tofurkey, as I like to call it. And
I've not heard that one before. That's good.
And I didn't I probably didn't do all the research, but an important part of feeling full is making sure that you have all of your nutrients and getting all of your vitamins and minerals and everything. And so I think it's really great to hear that you're including these extra ingredients like the flaxseed and the chia seeds, as I say, because it allows you to get all of those important proteins, which makes you feel full. And so what, I know that you're very proud of the health benefits of your pizza, because traditionally speaking, I mean, at least when I think pizza, I don't think healthy. What are the sort of health benefits, or how does your pizza compare on a health scale to the average stuff that I could get?
I'm glad you asked, actually.
Me too.
So our pizzas, what we did was we took the nutritional values of our pizza, and then we compared it to six or seven of the leading frozen pizzas out there. So the Goodfellas, the Chicago Town, all the big boys out there that we're essentially up against. And we took all their nutritional values as well. And we compared them to ours. And what we found was we had a feeling ours would be healthier, but we didn't realize that ours would contain 50% to over 50% less salt and sugar compared to these leading mainstream frozen pizzas.
Wow.
Which is something we now have as a stamp on the front of every single pizza, because we think this is something that's so significant, we can't ignore this, and we think people really will value this when they're buying our pizza, which hopefully, it tastes as good, if not better. Yeah. But just as important, you're not having half as much salt and sugar, which are the two things you just don't need to have in a ready meal. Obviously, you need some for flavor, but you don't need half as much as that you're getting in these frozen pizzas. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the stripping back all the ingredients without losing the flavor.
Yeah. An interesting thing that just occurred to me, I typically, I'm just thinking about myself on a day-to-day basis, I would never buy a frozen pizza to eat at home, because I think, I'm just aware they're not very healthy, and I prefer to have a whole kind of like a whole food diet, as in no processed foods and all of that. But if I really craved a pizza now, it's almost like, and it sounds like this is kind of the strategy in terms of sort of getting others like me, who I'm not fully committed to a plant-based diet, but now all of a sudden I could have this plant-based pizza for dinner one night. And it's a really easy thing, because it's almost like a treat, but as I'm reading the ingredients and hearing about what's in it, I'm finding I don't find anything scary in there. I can't really make an argument for it being like complete junk food.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a treat, but it's not such a bad treat.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you got me now. It's like all my arguments for why I wouldn't eat it are sort of just being stripped away, because I mean, it's just not nearly, it's almost good. And it's local ingredients, which I'm a big proponent of. I want to make sure that I eat locally for the most part. I mean, Italy is relatively close to us here in the UK, so it's not like flying them over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not to mention, I know that when I actually buy the pizza, the stuff I have to throw away, so the packaging, it's not quite the same as other regular pizzas. So what's different about OPP's packaging?
As part of our sort of mission to be the most sustainable frozen pizza in the world, we couldn't just focus on the ingredients. It has to go right through when it comes to ready meals. So what we did was we sourced these locally as well, which is really important to us. We use 2 local companies for all of our packaging at the moment. And as far as we know, one of our biggest claims is that our pizza box is actually 100% compostable. So you can put that, if you've got a compost bin at the end of your garden, you can just throw the pizza box straight in there. Wow. But if you put that in the ground, essentially it will just degrade over time. Yeah, so not just the fact that the box is compostable, but also we made sure the inks are vegan friendly, of course. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to the sleeve that goes around the pizza box, that comes from a carbon positive company, which is it's one more than carbon neutral in terms of their efforts to be as sustainable as possible. Huh. And all of this packaging is from partly recycled materials. which we're trying to improve, but it's at least half recycled materials.
Yeah.
And everything can be either composted or recycled. So the wrap can be recycled. And then one thing we did recently, which we were really proud of, was we became one of the first pizza companies to use a recyclable cling film that goes around the actual pizza itself.
Yep.
So we moved over to a PE cling film plastic, which is slightly thicker than a traditional plastic. And it means that if you take off any of the food waste and make sure it's clean, then that can go in your recycling bin as well. But we don't stop there. We're always thinking of ways we can push boundaries in terms of being more sustainable and more responsible about our packaging. We recently invested in a cardboard shredder.
Okay.
And so the reason being is we're getting a lot of our ingredients turn up in excess cardboard, which obviously you can recycle everything in our kitchen, can be thrown in recycling waste. But we know that there is an issue with recycling, and it's not the most efficient way of continuing the use of these materials, because a lot of recycling isn't actually recycled when you look into it, which is a big concern of ours. So we looked at how we can reuse this material, which we think reusing is more important than just recycling.
Absolutely.
It gives it another life, and then it can be recycled after that. So with our cardboard waste, we've now got a shredder. At the end of every shift, some of our staff will shred the cardboard, and then we'll use that for insulation in our boxes where we send out samples, prizes, and pizzas for our new direct consumer service as well. And it's something we champion to hope that other brands can learn from that, and we can guide them into doing similar things.
Yeah.
But also it's just about reducing the amount of packaging that just goes straight from us into the recycling system, which we know is inefficient. So at least if we can give it another life and encourage people to then recycle it, we hope that will help things, but also stimulate a little bit of change in the way that other people think about how they can upcycle and reuse what they already have.
Yeah, I think that's really important to do. And also the nice thing, I as a kind of byproduct of that, is that now you don't have to buy any packaging, so you end up saving money as a business, which is
it's twofold.
Great. Yeah,
it's twofold.
That's the interesting thing I'm noticing and learning as the more and more businesses I speak to, is actually a lot of these practices that are good for the environment and being sustainable actually end up being really good for the company as well, financially speaking, because it just means buying less and kind of having to just use less stuff, and you end up saving money everywhere by being a little bit clever on how you take advantage of what you already have and use. So that recyclable, the recyclable cling film is really interesting, because most of the time, like you said, it's very thin typically, and then you just end up chucking it. But this one is special because as long as it's clean, it can just be recycled. Is it
absolutely?
Is it even necessary? I mean, is it possible to just not have it so that people don't throw it away at all?
Yeah, because of the nature of our product, we have to wrap it so that it's food safe.
I see.
Just because of the way it ends up in the consumer's hands. But what we're looking at, and it looks like it's getting this way, is that we can move over to compostable cling film. Okay. It's something we're waiting for, and we know that there are a lot of scientists and developers out there working on it. Mm-hmm. So I imagine in the next few years, companies like us will be able to move over to a cling film which is totally compostable, which is ideal for us because we think it's one better than recyclable. Absolutely,
yeah, that makes sense. And so, in terms of what's coming up in the years ahead, I think you've mentioned that 2020 is when we were speaking earlier, that 2020 is a really exciting year for you. So, what are some of the cool things that you're looking forward to?
We've actually hit the ground running. So we've just launched our gluten-free margarita, which is our first new flavor in 3 or 4 years since we launched. We're not renowned for releasing lots of products. We work on what we do. We try and get it right, mm-hmm. and then we do a lot of market research. We do a lot of product taste testing, quality control, and we make sure it's as good as it can be before we launch something. So the gluten-free is a first for us. Yeah. It's a real step into that gluten-free market.
I think it's a good one, yeah.
Because we know there's a big crossover between gluten-free and plant-based.
Oh, right, okay.
And so we were getting more and more requests for us to do a vegan frozen pizza that happens to also be gluten-free. So we're really excited to say we've now launched this product on avocado, and it's working its way through most of our independent health stores around the country. And we're hoping to launch it into some larger retailers soon as well.
Awesome, yeah.
But that's out there, and we're starting to get feedback for that, which is really exciting. And this year is just going to be about pushing that product and you know, getting noticed by the consumers who have been waiting for it.
Yeah, I think the gluten-free is a really important one. There are so many people who are becoming very conscious of their gluten intake, and I think it's if you can avoid it and it tastes the same, why not? I mean, it's fantastic. Is it difficult to remove gluten from your product, or just in general?
With pizza, it's a real challenge, because I don't know if you've ever tried any gluten-free flour, gluten-free bread or dough.
I've eaten it. Yeah.
If you get a gluten-free pizza, it's often very thin crust.
Yes.
Because they struggle to get it to rise, and it just doesn't have that doughiness and that stretchiness. So they're often super thin. They crack quite easily.
Yeah, I was going to say they kind of crumble as well.
Yeah, and they have almost like a sandy texture, which is very far removed from how you want a pizza to taste.
Indeed, yeah.
We tried to develop this ourselves, actually, and for about 2 years, and we just couldn't crack it. So we worked with one of the UK's leading free-from experts, guys over at a company called Lab Pizza. They're based just north of London, and they specialise purely in gluten-free bases. Wow. And so we worked with these guys and basically said, you know, we've been trying this and trying to perfect this, but we need your help. So we got these experts on board. Martin, who runs the company, is from Italy, which always helps.
That helps a lot.
And with him, we've created this base with Lab Pizza that we think is the best on the market.
Oh,
and we've given it our magic. We've given it our magic homemade tomato sauce, some buffalo tomatoes, 3 types of our favourite V-bites cheesely, and we've launched it, and we're getting some really brilliant, exciting feedback. So now it's about just getting the message out there, and we're getting a lot of happy, excited new gluten-free customers that we can now get eating more plant-based, healthier food, which is something, you know, we're really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it sounds similar to what I was saying earlier about, you know, slowly being able to get people into your kind of world in a very easy and inviting way. Are you personally able to tell the difference between the gluten-free and the regular crust?
The gluten-free is slightly thinner. So yeah, I've eaten so many of our pizzas now. I'm not the perfect you know, I'm not the perfect taste tester for the gluten-free, because I've eaten so many of ours, but it's the best one I've ever tried. Obviously, I'm going to say that,
yeah,
but I wouldn't have launched something, you know, we did create a few using different products and ingredients, and we just weren't happy with it. We didn't want to release something that we weren't 100% behind. So when we discovered this space and put it together ourselves with our own twist, we knew we were onto something special, and we just had to get it out there. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really excited with it, and I personally would eat the gluten-free over our regular pizzas.
Oh, really?
And that's how much I like it.
Wow.
But I'm a fan of a slightly thinner crust, whereas our traditional classic range are sort of halfway between deep pan and thin crust. So we're trying to sit somewhere safely in the middle, so we're not excluding anyone because of their preferences. Whereas the new gluten-free one is slightly thinner, which I prefer. Yeah,
it's more like an Italian New York style, sounds like.
Absolutely, but we'll send you one to try, Daniel, with the rest of them, and
that's awesome.
Let me know what you think.
I'd love that. That'd be amazing. Yeah, I noticed that on the mushroom pizza, the crust kind of reminded me of sort of the standard American style pizza, which was really nice, because since I've moved to the UK, almost everyone here, it's pretty thin crust, and I'm from California, so we don't really do the New York style there very much, as much. So it was really nice to get that kind of a little bit more texture and feel to the crust, which You don't need to fold it, for example, which is really welcome.
Exactly.
Yeah, I quite like that.
And we found when we did our market research before we launched, we found that a lot of the deep pan pizzas out there in the frozen market in the UK, you'd get a lot of pizza base, and the ratio from pizza base to the sauce and the toppings was pretty poor. So you'd end up just eating, it'd be like 80-90% dough, and there'd be hardly any sauce, hardly any cheese, hardly any toppings. So we made sure that we got that ratio right, so that we don't want anyone coming to us saying, I really liked your pizza, but I had to add my own sauce, or I had to add more cheese, or I wanted more mushrooms. We've always made sure and prioritized the fact that this is a premium product, and you pay a little bit more, but you're never going to have to add your own toppings. We put on as much as we would want to have ourselves if we bought this pizza.
Yeah.
And that's just part of our ethos, is that we make these all ourselves, and it's a family business, so we really care what people think of it. We're not just trying to churn out loads of cheap products so that we can make a quick buck. It's about making something that people really, they can share an experience having this pizza, and it gets them thinking twice. But also, it's something we can be proud of when they say how much they loved it, and people are buying it for their friends and family, and we're proud that it is a pizza worth shouting about.
Yeah, and I think it really is. I think you guys are doing a great job. The mushroom one I tasted was really delicious. I promised myself I'd only eat half, and that was a promise I broke very quickly. So yeah, it was really good. And
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, certainly not. And yeah, I think you are doing a really great job. And ultimately, in the long run, if you're it does, like you said, if it costs a little bit more and you're really putting kind of the love and attention into it that you need to, rather than just churning out a quick product, it ends up being more beneficial for you as a business and for you as individuals working at the company, as well as for your customers. I mean, that's how you create a brand that people can trust, is when they know, this is made with love, basically, and with thought. I'm really curious to know, on a slightly different topic, just out of curiosity, because are you expanding into Europe as well, or are you currently focused only in the UK?
At the moment, we have one wholesaler based in Holland, called Next Foods, and not far from Amsterdam, and they distribute for us across Europe. So we're gradually, without we're a very small team, so most of our energy at the moment is based in the UK, and for the UK market, and we're very limited in terms of how quickly we can grow, because we're growing so much in the UK. But our wholesaler is doing really well out in Holland, and they're now talking about helping us get the pizzas over into Norway and some other countries in Europe.
Nice.
But yeah, we're in a couple of we're in quite a few jumbo supermarkets now across Holland, which is really exciting. And they're working their way through the rest of Europe very slowly. But we're hoping within the next 2 years, once we increase our production significantly, and we know we can keep up with demand, we're going to be focusing on Germany. That's our next country.
And so that was my my next question.
Just because of the size of the population that eating. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. So Germany, that was really the what I was wondering is, where in Europe is there the most demand for plant-based or vegan foods?
We looked into this recently. It's really interesting. So as you can imagine, UK and Ireland are right at the top.
Yeah.
Germany are up there, but actually, I believe it was per capita. It was Switzerland and Sweden. I can be wrong. I could be wrong with that, but I think Switzerland and Sweden per capita were actually eating more vegan food. But I think that's more about the demographic.
Okay, yeah, it could be.
The average income plays a large role in what people eat.
True.
But in terms of the amount of vegan food being consumed, I think because of the UK population, it's still one of the biggest markets. But Germany would be the next logical step for us, because they've got a huge number of people who are reducing the amount of meat and dairy they eat, and that's one of the fastest growing markets is in Germany. So we've got our pizza eyes set on Germany next.
Yeah, Excellent. Well, I'll let my friends know. I have a couple of friends living in Stuttgart, so I'll let them know to
Oh,
look out
great.
for it.
Yeah.
Did I hear? I thought I read somewhere that you're also looking, or you've already gone into the US?
No, we're talking to some people out there. So the challenge for us is that the US market is so enormous compared to the UK market.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think after some initial research, we've predicted that for every pizza we sell in the UK, if we have the right distribution in America, it would be one pizza in the UK versus 300 pizzas sold in America. So that's how much bigger the market would be. So and we only have our own little production site in Norfolk at the moment, which we're expanding and growing as quickly as we can, but we need to be ready for America when it happens. So
Yeah.
we think probably next year, the year after, we'll start we'll start focusing on America when we know we've got the production to keep up with the demand.
Yeah. And it's a cool place to actually start to make a change, because like you said, it's the #1 fast food. So if you can kind of convince people, actually a plant-based pizza is pretty good, it almost makes, I would imagine it would, if I had a one planet pizza for the first time, and I thought, actually, you know what, this is pretty good, and there's no animal products. My next question is there anything else that I could have that's plant-based? And it's sort of like kind of opens up this this world, and now I'm all of a sudden curious, maybe there are other things. And pizza is like a really sort of easy, kind of not intense way to get started in the world of plant-based food.
It's a perfect vehicle for change, hopefully, and it gets people thinking about, like you say, what else, you know, if a pizza can be vegan with the cheese on it and tastes just the same and looks the same, surely a burger can. Surely I can find some fish and chips out there that's vegan. And it's really exciting meeting people who haven't ever, you know, thought about eating vegan food before. They probably do accidentally, and when they try the pizza, it's great to see their minds, you know, almost trying to break through those barriers, and suddenly they think, well, you know, what else can I eat? This doesn't sound as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah, exactly right. So in terms of, you mentioned a bit of activism for plant food, just as we start to wrap up here. What are some of the other things that you do? I mean, aside from championing plant-based pizza and slowly getting people into the realm of plant-based foods, what else do you do on a day-to-day basis to be environmentally sustainable that might inspire some of the listeners here to also go maybe a bit more eco-friendly?
Off the top of my head, one of the things I can think of is that so we get a lot of our ingredients come through in plastic bags into the kitchen, and we're always thinking, what can we do to reduce our waste from the kitchen, from the production site? So we hand out all these plastic bags now to our staff, and I've got a big bag of about 20 of them at home, and I use those as a bin liner. So I'm not buying any bin liners which are made of plastic. I'm reusing what we've already had from the kitchen, giving it a second life. And that's kind of just outside the box thinking. You know, it's looking at a normal product that you'd normally just throw in the bin, and you'd never see it again, and it'd end up in landfill, and saying, well, actually, that can still serve a purpose, and it's just trying to think about where else you can use these things.
That's a really good. That's a good one.
For example, we did a big batch of the Funky Feast pizzas last week, and after we cooked up the mushrooms, the exotic mushroom mix in this rapeseed oil, garlic, and balsamic mix, we then cook the mushrooms and cool them and let them dry out before topping the pizzas. And then obviously we have quite a few litres of this lovely mushroomy mix, and then we hand that out with the staff. I take about 1 litre home, and you can use that in your cooking. You know, it gives it a great mushroom flavour for your soup or for your gravy. So it's just kind of thinking outside the box and using what resources you already have.
Yeah.
And giving things a second life is really important.
And again, it comes back to the point we were making earlier, which is, first of all, you're reducing your waste. And second of all, again, you're saving money by doing it. I mean, there's
absolutely,
financially, it makes sense. And also, where else? I mean, if you could probably, in theory, sell that oil for like 5 or 6 pounds a bottle, and that someone would buy that, you know. And here it is, getting it for free, and it's avoiding waste.
Yeah, so it's trying to be more clever about what you've already got.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important message. And we can all be doing better, but it's a journey, isn't it? And you learn as you go, and you just be open to change. I recently swapped over to using Lush. I don't know if you've been into one of the Lush stores. They're all across the UK. We're one of the leading sustainable. They do sort of hair beauty products.
Yeah.
But they do it as very zero waste, forward-thinking brand. And they do these deodorant blocks, which look like soap. They're like a very hard block of soap.
Yeah.
And it's just essentially deodorant, but in a solid form. You get it in a stainless steel tin, and you just rub it under your arms instead of a deodorant which you would spray, which we know are not ideal for the planet. Yeah. And they go into landfill because they're mixed material. So we now use this at home. We now use this zero waste deodorant, and I've started buying it as a gift for people I know and spreading the message.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
It's not just using something yourself. It's kind of actually I can go out there and tell other people I can show them how good something works.
Yeah.
It's more sustainable and trying to encourage other people to use what I can personally vouch for myself.
Well, thank you for letting me know. I've been trying to look for an alternative because I don't use spray, but I use the kind of the roll-on that comes in plastic, and I never know.
I know it's a shame, isn't it?
I don't really like it.
Get yourself down to a Lush and ask them about the deodorant bars. That's one of the best things I've done recently that I'm now championing all over the place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And thanks for outlining those. I think those are some really great tips that people can use on a day-to-day basis, and I'll certainly be checking out the deodorant block as well. And so as we wrap up here, where can people learn more about the work you're doing, or place or actually taste some of the delicious pizza that you make, or follow you for news and updates?
Okay, so most of what we do, we champion on social media. So you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We use Instagram stories pretty much every day to try and share our top tips and show people what it takes to run an ethical vegan pizza brand. So you'll see our faces on there most days.
Cool.
We also have a blog on our website. We're rebranding and relaunching our new website, just oneplanetpizza.com, over the next couple of weeks. But there's a lot of information about how we started and what we're doing, and all about the pizzas and flavors and where to find them on the website. But you can also buy our pizzas on Ocado, which is the UK's largest online supermarket. We're also on the Vegan Kind supermarkets, alternative stores, and about 500 independent health stores across the whole country. On our website, there's a stockist locator, so you can zoom into your area, type in a postcode, and find out where your nearest stockist is. Yeah,
that's that stockist locator is how I found it.
It's really helpful, really big help.
And I was surprised. It's hard to miss. I mean, you've done a really great job of being spread around, especially in London. I mean, that's where I was looking, but it's basically, I mean, wherever you go, almost there's within a walking distance, almost there's pretty much a place that you can buy it. So no excuse, at least if you're living in London. Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. We're also going to be catering a number of sort of leading vegan plant-based food events this year. And there's a list of events on our website, but we're going to be at Vegan Life Live this year, the Plant-Based Expo, and I think we're at Om Yoga, which is the largest yoga natural health, a healthy living show in London as well.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So you have a very busy schedule, and you're getting the word out there and getting it everywhere. Sounds like there's a lot of places we can go to actually find you and meet you. And
absolutely
eat it.
Yeah, we're not shy.
Yeah, it's important. All right, Joe. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's we're all rooting for you here, and looking forward to seeing how the new pizzas develop, any flavors that are coming out in the near future, and being spread all over the world. So, thanks again for your time.
Pleasure. I'm really honoured for you to have me, and keep up all the great things you're doing to raise awareness for sustainability. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thanks very much. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, give us a 5-star rating. And also, please subscribe, whether on your podcast app or on YouTube. And that way you can be the first to know about new episodes. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.